Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tech Talk with Mansoor Ahmad, MSAcc. And today I brought back Kostov Acharya. And
Hello.
I have, here he is, he said hello. I also have with us today Arvind. And he'd like to keep it very discreet, so we're only going to call him Arvind.
Hello. Oh, the mystery intensifies.
Yeah, the mystery. Who is this man,
mystery
Arvind?
man on the man, the myth, the legend.
Yes. So Arvind, he works in hardware, and we're going to find out all about like what hardware is all about. So Arvind, can you like introduce yourself and tell everyone about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Hey Mansoor. Hey Kaustav. Great to be here. I'm what you'd call a power electronics engineer. So my focus in general is everything to do with like powering stuff of different types. Everything from electric vehicles to regular vehicles and consumer electronics that you use in everyday life. Medical electronics if you happen to have implants inside you and so on. So that's it's primarily a short snippet of what I do.
Oh, okay. So right now, that's what you do. That's pretty interesting. So like you work in the medical industry.
Oh, I've worked in the auto, the consumer electronics, and the medical industries primarily.
Oh,
Consumer electronics would primarily be anything around like anything to do with devices that you kind of go out and buy at Best Buy, right? For instance.
Oh, okay. So like anything like from like TVs to like
Yeah,
smartphones.
Right. Yeah, that would broadly be consumer electronics, and my focus has primarily been on let's say phones and other like smart watches and or devices that you would wear on you, battery powered
Interesting.
devices that you would carry.
Okay, that's pretty broad. Can you tell us what someone who works in hardware does, and like can you generalize it as well?
Okay, so I'll try to give you a sampling of what folks would do because it kind of encompasses quite a broad range of things. In consumer electronics, for example, and I'll use the let's say someone's trying to make a phone. It takes a lot of different types of disciplines to come together to make a phone. You'd have mechanical engineers who kind of are have a lot to do with how the phone looks and engineering it so it can be manufactured at scale. And so on. You'd have people who are designing the phones, who are also kind of engineers and designers who would craft it so it performs the right function you want, and so on. And then you'd have electrical engineers of various kinds. For example, I take care of what happens. Making sure your phone works off the battery the way you expect it to. Making sure all the accessories in it or all the different parts in it are powered up the way they need to be. For example, you have the screen, you have your the audio systems, you have RF systems on there which help you wirelessly communicate. So keeping them all powered up and happy and so on, and making sure your battery lasts a long time. That's kind of my area of focus. Making sure you can charge your batteries and so on. That's broadly what I do in the consumer electronics space.
So making it all efficient and work properly and like last long and all that good stuff that like people buy hardware for.
Yes, that's right.
It's interesting. So
Oh,
you are go ahead. What was that, Kasal?
So what he's actually not telling you, he's also the number one person that supposedly sends the data back to Bill Gates. So track your movements.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he has all the info on my phone right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, for those listeners that may not understand my sense of humor, I'm totally kidding. That's not his area of focus. But of course, it would not be. I would be amiss if I did not make that joke.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. So like, how did like you start, Arvind, and how did you get your foot in the door in the beginning?
Okay. I mean, that's it's been quite a journey, and I'll try to maybe like start from the beginning and be short about it and not ramble on. So I guess my real start was that I was a hobbyist doing building electrical circuits and so on from quite early on, maybe around 10 years or so, or even a little before that. And so that was where my real interest started out in just electrical engineering in general. And then got through school, and then the first I got an undergrad degree in electrical engineering. That's kind of the professional starting point. And once I did that, I went to work in the auto industry. That was still back in India. I was working in an industry where building engine management systems for diesel engines. And for those who don't know, or maybe an interesting automobile bit of info here is that most modern diesel engines have this extremely high pressure fuel being injected into the cylinder. It's called common rail direct injection, and it takes a lot of electronics and and complex control to kind of get the engine working with a system like that. It's kind of the state of the art. It's been the state of the art, I guess, for a while now, but and now they're gone, right? Because no one wants diesels anymore. So that's the stuff I started working on, especially the power electronics aspects of it. Especially with controlling the injectors, which actually pump in this high pressure or fuel at which is there's a rail which stores the fuel at extremely high pressures, and then so it can atomize it finally and inject it into the cylinder so it burns nicer and so on. So that's kind of where I got my start, is working on that. And there were interesting challenges around. I was working for diesel applications in India, and they were very different to diesel cars in Germany and other parts of the world. So it needed a lot of very new engineering to kind of make such low cost applications, and still make the technology accessible, right? And to make auto rickshaws, for example, for those who know what that is, or tuk-tuks as they call it, and also like small SUVs and stuff like that. So that was my very first thing, and at the end of it, I kind of realized that from a technical perspective, because I'm kind of was always oriented towards technology in general, that I needed to get a master's degree and or potentially more to kind of actually keep going on that journey. So that's when I took my break and got back into school and got my master's, again specializing in power electronics. But then the thing that was most interesting at that point of time was electric vehicles. This was kind of about a little over a decade ago, and all this was kind of just gathering steam at the time. And so my focus was on the power electronics aspects for electric vehicles and hybrids and so on. So post that, again continuing on in the auto industry, I worked on building power electronics for electric vehicles and electrified vehicles, which interestingly is like any vehicle which has like a gas plant and like an electric motor is kind of like in that electrified bucket. So yeah, then working on various aspects of technology, there are many challenges around packaging things and making sure they operate reliably and at high temperatures and so on. And after doing that for a while, kind of wanted to do something different. And I went into the consumer electronics industry because it's really fast paced. It's a more pure exploration of technology, because it's kind of things like reliability, for example, take a little bit of a backseat in not completely absent. I have to say a little bit of a backseat compared to, let's say, like something in the automotive industry. But then you get to explore the forefront of what you can do with technology, right? And as you know from all the devices that everyone uses, cutting edge pieces of technology in our pockets. So I worked on developing this thing called on how to transfer energy wirelessly. And again, this is very common now, is like you can charge your phone without actually plugging it in, or your smartwatch, or other devices that you might have. And so I kind of worked on developing that technology on how to enable that. And that was interesting. And then once I was done with that, and the thing with the consumer electronics industry is also the technology is extremely fluid. So things are born and die all the time. So that wasn't very interesting after a certain point. And I wanted to try and apply the technology though. So I went into the medical industry to then build kind of the same thing. I was working on wirelessly powering implants that you would put in the body. So this is actually very common. Like you have things like pacemakers and stuff like that, which are all wirelessly powered. But I was kind of working on a new kind of implant, which is really tiny but can be deeper in your body as well. And you don't want to have like wires going in to charge it because there would be infection pathways. So I worked on technology and devices to wirelessly charge these implants. Right, that was my work in the medical industry, and then once that was done, get back to consumer electronics because I kind of missed the pace of what pace of just how things go, and also the pace of technology in the consumer electronics industry. So I'm back, and the most recent work, unfortunately, I can't talk a whole lot about because there's a bunch of things that aren't yet announced and so on. But kind of that's broadly the story.
Geez, that's very like broad, and like it seems like you have a lot of like different exposure and different types of applications of technology and like different electronics and hardware and like manufacturing pieces that actually like engineers work on. So yeah, I find that very like interesting. This is probably going to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. It's just a series of experiments and finding out what happens.
Yeah. So I would say like the next question would be, what do you recommend for someone who wants to get involved in the same role or position?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I mean, and again, there's no set formula, right? And I'll try to maybe share what my view of getting into it is. I mean, again, I kind of like to think the key thing is to get formal education in some form of electrical engineering, and I want to come back to this and maybe have a more creative take on if there are alternate ways of getting there. Like in the software industry, for example, right? I mean, we've kind of moved past like having a very formal path and getting in getting to almost anything you want to do in that space. Just as an example, and maybe we could come back and talk about there are other creative ways of getting into hardware. Oh, sorry. And but at least the to kind of stay on the original thread, it starts off with like kind of get out of high school and then get some kind of formal education in electrical engineering. And I'm not aware of all the paths again, so I'll stick to the ones that I know of. So there'll basically be some kind of an undergraduate degree. And within electrical engineering, there's so many different specializations, even at an undergrad stage. And I don't think it really matters a whole lot on being absolutely right with your choice in undergrad, right? I mean, if someone clearly knows, for example, that they want to do power electronics, they could focus on power electronics, right, during the undergrad. Some things they want to be maybe focus, they really like communication, for example. They would maybe focus more on learning how to do antennae or other communication technologies, right, and focus on it. Maybe the one thing I would like to maybe stress that is probably not that important to get it absolutely right, because it kind of gives you a foundation to explore and move in different directions. And that's the starting point at which you could get into the industry, and again, a huge amount of roles are open at that point. Again, there's the question of what kind of industry one wants to get into, and if it's going to be a startup versus like a large established corporation, and if there are differences in what they look for in a candidate. And maybe we can chat a little more about that separately if that's of interest. And you kind of go on from there. The alternate path would be, or one of the alternates would be that you kind of get in a bunch of internships while you're doing your undergrad, and you kind of get a greater sense of what you want to be doing, and then which would enable you to maybe like go on to a master's degree, like maybe even right after you are done with your undergrad program. So that allows like a lot of optimization in coming out like prepared the best with the least amount of time expended, but again, not strictly necessary to do it all at one shot.
So like, would you say like, sometimes like undergrad students don't really know what they want to do, but think they know what they want to do, but they really don't know in the end?
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what I was alluding to as well, in the sense that, I think, just looking back upon what I've seen over my time in the industry, I would say it's good. I mean, you kind of are aiming in the general direction, no matter what you do. It's great if you hit, and if you pick something that you end up loving enough that you keep doing it all the time. But I guess it's also important to acknowledge that that's not necessary. And by the time you graduate, and either the industry might have moved on, and you might have like different things that it needs, or your interests might have moved on, or you might just not even like certain things and want to do different things. So an undergrad degree in general should provide for all these possibilities, and for it just lays the platform for you to to kind of adapt as you go.
And explore,
yeah,
and explore and find out like really like
I think no one should feel like after an undergrad degree that they kind of like that the direction is set. Because even within engineering disciplines, even if you're being an electrical engineer, which is kind of what I am, like let's say if I wanted to go and go and learn about buildings, and if that was a huge passion, I would still feel like some aspects of my electrical engineering degree would come in handy, and maybe I could learn other parts and find a way to get there. So no one should feel very limited, even though it is if you end up having good alignment at the beginning, it can't hurt. But again, it's not completely binding, is my opinion.
Yeah, everybody has their destiny, I'd say, or goal or place in life.
Yeah. Or you could be searching for one. Yeah, I mean, yeah, all permutations are good.
Yeah.
Talk with Mansoor Ahmad, now upgraded to more philosophical life lessons.
The life lessons I wish I had known about.
No, it's the ever-changing things. I mean, and I guess if you ask us the same questions like in a couple of years, we'd have completely different answers. But
yeah, that actually kind of goes into my next question. Like, and that's really good advice, by the way. What is your best advice for someone starting out or who works in high-level hardware starting out?
That's again. I'm now kind of we just got into a philosophical kind of mood. So
I know.
I'm not thinking
it was perfect because it was like leading into this.
And try to keep it kind of succinct as well to anyone listening. Yeah. I'll focus on maybe a couple aspects of it, just purely from a technical aspect, right? And I think I've always believed in having strong foundations. So no matter what stage someone is in their career, I think the foundations are the one that at least I keep going back to, because I keep switching like the kind of things I do very often. So what has stitched things together for me is the foundations. So I think being passionate about what we want to do, and kind of building that strong foundation. In this case, let's say it's electrical engineering. It's about being a really strong electrical engineer, right? With the knowing the basics of the area and so on, and not so much about like everything there is to know, but the foundations would be the one thing. And the second thing would be just continuous improvement, right? It's not about like learning new things like in spurts, but if it's kind of a mindset of continuous improvement and just being kind of cognizant of changing trends and learning into the very fabric of how every day goes, right, in a fun way, right? I mean, it's all this has to be sustainable, and to be sustainable, it has to be interesting and fun. So I think finding that balance, I think technically is probably the one thing I would say. And then maybe more from a philosophical perspective, I would say, like, having this North Star of, like, and it need not be one North Star like forever, but at any moment, having a North Star of what set of things you're looking to optimize, right? I mean, it could be, want to be, explore new technologies, even like someone starting out, that's really interesting. As you go along in your career, it could be, maybe you want to grow into a leader in that area, right? Or maybe you just want to maximize your earnings. Yeah, I think it's, there can be an infinite amount of things, that someone could be prioritizing for, but having a North Star at any moment, and kind of like maybe a short term and mid term and a long term view of it is important, even if those keep changing.
Yeah, yeah, I think the same. I think like in my opinion, like for me, like I would say like having broad, short term, mid term, and long term like goals, but then just not like limiting yourself to like one small, like very focused like goal. Like for example, like for me, like I would say for my past accounting career, if someone wanted to work only in a CPA firm, what if they go into a CPA firm and then they don't want to work there anymore? So why not make the goal like I want to work somewhere where I'm like very welcome and valued, and I'm gonna start here and work my way towards an organization that I can like achieve the most in.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that and again, since we've dipped into the philosophical bucket, okay, it's, I think as a society that matures over time, I think it's all about enabling more people to do the things that they would like to be doing, rather than being focused on cookie cutter things, right? As so that's a noble goal, I think.
Yeah, this is actually a little different than how the episodes usually go. So this is a good change. I guess my last and one of my last questions is like for you, and I guess in a more general sense, like how often does the technology change, and how often do you have to learn new tools and capabilities?
That's a great question, and I'll try to stick on point primarily, and then maybe like give a more broad take on it. So I've been in the industry maybe about maybe a little over 15 to 20 years or so on, and I would say like broadly, like you get like these big maybe changes in trends and so on, maybe 2 or 3 times is probably like what I've seen, right? Where and this is very subjective, right? I mean, I'm kind of just defining it as something which is a little bit of a change to how the norm is, and the magnitude of that even is pretty subjective. So it's not very fast in the hardware world. But having said that, it might also be because I kind of view technology adaptation as being a continuous process, and same with tools and personal capabilities as well. Um, so it's hard to say in absolutes here. So from my perspective, broad shifts and trends have been very infrequent, but there are probably a lot of minor steps to that process. And by adapting that, and adapting and adopting the mindset of kind of like continuous improvement, it kind of doesn't feel like you're having many changes, if that makes sense, because you would be constantly at pace with like the new tools that are coming out, for example, and also from improving your capabilities. And I'll just give an example of that because maybe it's too general. If let's say a technical example would be that one learns new methods of analysis as you go on. Maybe a new statistical methods for designing something, or maybe adopting new algorithms that would kind of change the design process and improve it, and maybe optimizing these algorithms as you would go on, right? And as there are external drivers as well as my. Just give me a minute. My daughter just popped in. I'll be back.
Okay, we're gonna give him a minute. So Kostava, I really wanted to thank you, like, for bringing Arvind on. This is changing into something a little more educational than usual.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's I've known Arvind for years. Aside from being a fierce competitor on the racetracks, he's one of my closest friends. And when I did this with you, I was just like, oh, who would be great to have on is Arvind, and I was glad he was able to join us.
Oh, I hope I hope this is useful and not.
This is useful because it tailors to the target audience and the focus of like what the purpose of this podcast is for. We were going into, I believe, like something about being very like malleable.
Right. I think that's the and it was, sorry, just to pick up the thread, and I was talking about tools and capabilities, and an interesting shift that happened is even from the time that I started, and kind of gives away my age a little bit, is the rapid rise of computational tools, right? I mean, you now have access to increasingly almost incredulous amount of computing capability. So which means the things that you kind of couldn't do like 10 years ago, you could now like apply computational techniques to. So that is an example of something where a tool has kind of like dramatically changed. So someone would have to adopt it, and you could still kind of break it down into what the need is, right, for the exact role that someone's doing. Maybe some roles don't need to kind of have that aspect of technology kind of growth, and maybe there's an aspect of leadership growth, right? Maybe some roles have you're more or less doing or dealing with the same kinds of processes over time, like industries which have really long development timelines, for example. And maybe then the change there is in kind of, let's say, how one deals with certain roles and maybe growing into leadership and so on. So I think adapting is in general just a continuous process, is at least like how I viewed it always.
I mean, I find that with like most careers, like like if you want to succeed, the learning has to never stop.
Right.
Yeah.
And it has to be, I would say, maybe it has to be sustainable, as in that's, if we were to go a little bit beyond, that sounds like a really great goal to have, and why is it hard to get in practice is maybe because it's not sustainable. So I would say the focus, I'd say, just anecdotally looking back, understanding what is sustainable for us. We are all very unique in our what we are and how we look at the world and so on. So incorporating these practices into or these goals into our kind of day-to-day fabric, right? So we're not like clashing with it, or it doesn't like pull you down in some way, right? I mean, I've also seen instances of like, oh, I'm going to like scramble and stay ahead with certain things and not really enjoying it, and then it wouldn't be sustainable. And then in the long run, it's actually not going to help as well. So I think finding that balance is key.
Yeah. I think this has been quite an interesting subject and episode. I don't want to like plague Arvind with too many more questions. I think we've covered quite a lot for today. Gustav, what do you think?
I mean, I think Arvind touched upon many subjects that are relatable, right? And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. I as I was listening to him talk, bits of my own career popped into my mind, and I think as we're moving into a day where, or a type of society where social media platforms are intrinsically a part of your life, the pressure to succeed is tenfold, because it seems relatively easy to become hugely successful, and everyone is saying, oh yeah, just do a few key things and you're going to be successful. But at the end of the day, none of that even matters, because if you're not happy doing whatever it is that you're doing, you could make millions of dollars, but if you're not happy with yourself as a person, your own career trajectory, it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I know people that relatively have what most would consider quote unquote dead end jobs, but they're absolutely happy in their life. And in some ways I envy that, because, you know, I've always been raised with a mindset of, oh, you have to provide and you have to be successful, otherwise you're considered a failure. And breaking myself out of that has allowed me to achieve a new level of Zen. And that translates into the people that I work with, the decisions that I make, because most things do not stress me out. I mean, sure, I get a little high strung sometimes, but you know, who doesn't? But I think that ultimately, Arvind's absolutely right. You have to have that guiding light, that North Star that keeps you balanced. For me, it's a work-life balance that allows me to spend time with my daughter and my wife, and occasionally go tootle around with cars on the weekend. And I'm just like, you know what? At that point, I'm not chasing a paycheck anymore. It's more of like, yeah, I'm comfortable and that's good, and I'm just enjoying my life. And honestly, there's no pay that can make up for that.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have that balance, really. And I mean, I myself am still getting there, and that's exactly what I use this podcast for that balance and like happiness, you know, and you know, for something productive to provide, you know, hopefully the world one day. So you know, right now just a few people. So no, I wanted to say this was good. This is really good. I wanted to thank Gustav and Arvind for coming on again today. And I'm going to close off for the night. So this has been another episode of Tech Talk with Mansoor Ahmad with an MSAcc degree. And I wish you guys a good night. Good night, Gustav and Arvind.
Mansoor with the master's degree, Arvind with the what is a PhD degree, and Gustav with no degree.
No, I only have a master's degree. Just I dropped out of my. I mean, and if you haven't heard, you need to be a dropout to be successful in the tech industry. I mean,
Well, in that case, I've got that covered.
It's really hard to live on a PhD like program for.